Okay. Am I coming through? It's Arlene DeFury here today for Night Talks. Steve, am I coming through okay here?
I can hear you.
You can?
You are, yes.
Okay, so I can't do the video button, unable to start video, so you stopped it, so I'm not quite sure. Okay. All right, so we are here today with Nick D'Alessandro, graduate of 2003. So Nick's going to share with us his experiences at St. Joe's and tell you a little bit about financial management and where he works now at American Century Investments and his road to getting there, his education. And a lot of our boys are interested, Nick, so you know, in a business career. That always is a very popular major. You had talked about, you know, Holy Cross. You had talked about the fact that it's liberal arts and all of that kind of stuff. And you know, we are interested in knowing what's a great path if you do want to do some kind of investment work and that kind of thing. What are some great majors maybe to major in and touch upon, you know, all of those things in regard to the occupation. But first, before we even begin with that, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are right now, you know, how life is, what's going on in your own life and your own experience at St. Joe's, and maybe give some shout outs to some of your teachers.
Sure. Good to see everybody. I was actually really excited to do this as a former alumni. You know, obviously St. Joe's is some memorable moments of my life. So I was happy when Scott reached out and asked me to do this. As Arlene mentioned, 2003, which is probably in and around when you guys were being born, which is making me feel older than I thought. Actually walking into this, but so I went to St. Joe's. I grew up in Mahwah, New Jersey, ended up going to St. Joe's. Didn't really know anybody there, but my father had gone. He was a graduate of 77. My uncle was a graduate of 75, I think. So there was that history there, and I knew I wanted to play sports, and you know, obviously St. Joe's was better than Bosco and Bergen, so it just was a no-brainer. Went to school, played football, basketball, and baseball for 3 years, and then football and baseball for my senior. Actually got involved with some of the plays, interestingly enough. So I kind of felt that I took advantage of almost everything that St. Joe's had to offer at the time. You know, didn't really know anybody, as I said, walking in, but developed some really great friendships. I thought it was really great kind of life experience, getting to know, because that's kind of what life is, right? You're going to go to college and you're going to meet people that you didn't know going there. And then you're going to get a job and you're not going to know any of those people. And then you're going to change jobs and you're not going to know any of those people. So that was a really interesting and cool opportunity to do that young. And I've got some great friends for it that I stay in touch with to this day. And, you know, St. Joe's it's interesting because it's like, I mean, you guys don't probably know what frats are, but it's like a frat where your network of guys, whether they're your age or they're, you know, 15 years older like I am, or 15 years older than me, or 20 years older than that, and like my father, you know, St. Joe's guys are like a fraternity. And, you know, like if two people come in and ask me for a job, and one of them, and all things being equal, one of them's a St. Joe's guy and the other one's not, I'm going to give the job to a St. Joe's guy because, you know, we had a similar experience. We went through the same kind of environment, and you know, those kind of commonalities go a long way in this in the world. So going back to my story, so I went to St. Joe's, really positive experience, learned a lot. I played for Tony Karsage and played for Frank Salvano, which I would imagine were both gone by the time you guys got there, but great coaches and really cool experience. Was recruited to
Salvano just left maybe a couple of years ago, Frank, and Tony as well. So yeah. So a lot of them may know, you know, people know the names for sure.
Yeah.
But you weren't just an athlete, you know, you weren't just an athlete. You made your mark on St. Joe's.
Yeah, I mean, obviously academics is oh Jesus. So I was in the play. So interesting story about the play. So I mean, to be candid, the only reason myself and a few of my buddies joined the play was because we wanted to meet girls. You know, we went to an all boys
good
school,
reason. Mm-hmm.
and you know, there was an opportunity. We had gone to the plays my freshman and sophomore year, and there were all these pretty girls up there. And we're like, why are we not participating in this? You know, so we did. And it was kind of eye-opening because, you know, I played sports my whole life. And you have a level of camaraderie that comes from sports, you know, that locker room banter, those friendships, those, you know, the experiences that you have with these people are lifelong, and they're memories that you'll never forget. And I really wasn't expecting to get those same kind of camaraderie through the play. But it was kind of eye-opening that, you know, for the first time in my life, because, you know, sports are kind of one gender versus, you know, another gender. You play sports with other guys. And this was the first experience of my life to get that kind of camaraderie with girls, which was really kind of eye-opening. It was, you know, the highs and lows of, you know, winning a state championship or losing a state championship are the same kind of highs and lows you feel being in a play.
Yeah.
You know, you
That
get off
adrenaline, the adrenaline rush, right?
Yeah,
Do you remember, what was the play you were in? Do you remember?
I was in Footloose.
Ah.
Yeah. So I thought I'd be a tree, you know, because that's why we were there, was to be a tree and to meet girls. And then the next thing you know, me and three of my buddies were on stage singing and dancing.
Yeah.
And really out of our element. But it was a ton of fun. And to watch Tony Carsage kind of I'll never forget it when we did the play for all the St. Joe's guys.
Right.
The coaches thought it was hysterical.
Right.
And they were literally high stepping up and down the aisles, making fun of us the whole time we were on stage. It was pretty embarrassing at the time, but looking back, I just, you know, it was a fond memory, and it was a really cool experience.
Good.
So,
yeah, Mr. Salta tends to work his magic. He gets those guys involved, and then, you know, expecting, you know, we'll do a little stage crew. You'll be a little extra, and then all of a sudden they're one of the lead roles. You know, it's
yeah. Is Mr. Salta still there?
Yes, he is. Yes,
Wow.
he is still putting on fabulous, fabulous shows. As a matter of fact, this Thursday night is the cabaret night. Do you remember cabaret night at St. Joe's? It's when all the talent comes together, and, you know, we focus on, you know, the seniors particularly, and they perform, and it's wonderful. So this is a big one. Unfortunately, it's going to be virtual, but it's going to be a great night, and there's bidding, and there's all kind of prizes and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a lot of energy has gone into it. So I hope they get a good turnout. And for all those watching, please, Thursday night, cabaret night. So yes, and Mr. Risalta will be there, front and center. So that's all good.
Tell him I say hi if you speak
definitely,
to him.
Definitely. He usually joins us on these programs, so we may hear from him. I don't know. We may end up hearing from him. So
okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, cabaret night was great. Highly recommended. If you didn't go, if you've never seen it, do it. It's fun.
A lot of fun.
And you won't get like tree level talent like me. You'll get like the real like A games. The A players will be there, so it'll actually be entertaining.
Were you in the fashion show? Do you remember being at a fashion show?
Oh man, I forgot about the fashion show.
I was in the fashion show. We just had the fashion show. That was a great event as well. Again, virtual this year, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was in the fashion show. I forgot about that.
See that?
Yeah. So anyway, St. Joe's was great. Awesome experience.
What were your favorite classes? Do you remember any favorite classes, favorite teachers that for any kind of reason, or maybe some are gone now, but
favorite classes. So I had Mr. Hubner for algebra.
Excellent.
Also my baseball coach. That was a good class. Valvano used to coach history, or teach history, which was a good class. It's been so long. I'm trying to think of something. Yeah. Mr. Hopper was our biology teacher.
A lot of people are,
He was great.
Yes.
Trying to think of some of other teachers. I mean, I was a science guy.
Go ahead.
I was always into the sciences, so I flocked towards that.
Right.
You know, the math. I mean, math and science were kind of the subjects that I liked more so than some of the other subjects. So
right.
Kind of why I'm kind of gravitating towards those names.
Right.
But yeah.
You ended up getting recruited, correct?
So yeah, so I got recruited to play football and baseball at Holy Cross. There was a couple other schools that I was thinking about going to, but this was the only one that was going to both. And then also it was the best school, like academically, that I got into.
Yeah.
And my father always taught me when I was young that, you know, I look at it this way, like of all the guys I played with some incredible athletes over the years. And there's been a ton better athletes that have come through St. Joe's since I've been there. And there's probably going to be even better athletes going forward. There's only two guys I know from St. Joe's that never had to work in sports, and that's Devin and Jay McCourty.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody else at some point has to be kind of a well-rounded person. And academics are going to be the cornerstone of that. So, that was a lesson I learned pretty early on. And my father kind of pushed me to go to Holy Cross because of the academic environment there. And, when I was growing up, you didn't specialize. So you played football, you played baseball, and the way you trained for baseball was basketball. And, it was kind of like our off-season training. So I thought it was just a really cool opportunity to go do both. And to go to a really good school and get educated in the meantime. So that's what I did. And thankfully I went to Holy Cross and I had that kind of mindset of academics being equally important because, within the first 3 months being there, I had reconstructive knee surgery. I got my 5th concussion and I was being told that I shouldn't play football anymore. So at that point you're like, well, what do I do now? I've got to redefine myself kind of as a person, as a professional. And, I've identified as this athlete for 20 years, maybe not 20 years, but, 15 years of my adolescence. So that kind of mindset put me in a reasonable position to kind of make that call and to start thinking about the world and kind of what life I wanted and what professions could get me that life, which is why I ended up leaving Holy Cross, because Holy Cross is a liberal arts college, great school, but you don't get a finance degree or an accounting degree or, you can't take like a pre-med.
Right.
It's not a science institution, it's a liberal arts college. So, I was studying economics, which was giving me the
we're going to get, right.
Yeah, it was as close as you're going to get. And what's fun, I always say that, economics is like the social studies of math, because, in math, 2 + 2 is 4. Whereas if you ask an economist what 2 + 2 is, he'll say 5, and then he'll tell you why it's 5, because it's such an art. It's like law that way. It's up for interpretation. Whereas finance isn't really like that. Accounting's not really like that. And there's several other studies. And that's kind of, I'm more of that black and white thinker, that I'm more comfortable with 2 + 2 being 4 than it being 5. So I decided to leave Holy Cross. I went back to school at Rampo College, and I actually was working for the family business at the time. So my father had some back issues, actually an old football injury, that he needed some help. It's a manual labor job. So I was doing that and kind of working for him, and which was also a experience. If you ever had a chance to work in a family business or just work generally, do it, because you'll never get closer to people that are successful than that. I mean, and to pick their brains, there's no dumb questions, just fair questions to people, and you get a lot out of it. But was doing that, went to school. As I said, I gravitated towards finance and accounting. Ended up working there was a career day at Rampo College where some folks came and presented what they were doing professionally, and I found a company called New England Financial, that they were a group of financial to try and basically build financial plans for individuals, which I thought I didn't really know much about it, but it sounded pretty cool and it sounded like a cool title, and I was like, oh, let me try this. And what I learned is that it's really hard to grow a financial practice when you're young, mainly because your source of clients is your network and your other 20-year-olds or 23-year-olds or 25-year-olds. And there's not a lot of really wealthy ones of those.
Right.
So you struggle early on, but I used it as a way to get licensed. So in order to work in finance, you need to pass 3 regulatory exams. So it's the Series 7, 63, and then 65. So the Series 7 is kind of like a general regulatory exam where they basically test your knowledge of finance so that you can claim yourself as a professional. All of these exams, by the way, if you can get through college, you can pass any one of them. They're not rocket science. They're just, kind of check the box type things to make sure that you understand what you're doing before you start advising people on it. Series 63 is a state a law exam, basically understanding the rules and regulations. And then the 65 is really kind of the capstone course, where it basically enables you to charge for your financial advice, kind of like a lawyer or a doctor. That's kind of if you get that, then you're in a reasonable position. So
So
did
at
that.
Rambo, did you study accounting basically, Nick? Was that your major? Was it accounting? Was
Like,
it finance? Was it?
I was a double major, accounting, finance, and did a minor in international business.
Wow. Okay. So you had a great
Yeah.
background, and then you took your Series 7s. Okay.
So then I took,
So was
yeah.
there
So
a career fair that you really got involved in really looking at a financial industry per se? You got that connection through the career fair?
for sure, yeah. I mean, the thing is that there's so many jobs,
Yeah.
and when you're studying this stuff, like, you have no idea what's out there. I mean, I've been doing it for 15 years, and I had no idea. I still meet people in the industry that tell me what they're doing. I'm like, I didn't even know that was a job. Because there's so many places that you can take some of these careers.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just gotta.
I just want you to see Mr. Salter wrote you a little note here. Did you see that? Great to see you, Nick. Thanks for looking back fondly on your experience on the St. Joe's stage. And Mr. Salter was saying a number of our speakers that we've had here have had that stage experience. I wonder if that makes them, more willing to come here and actually present themselves. I mean, skills for life, as Mr. Salter always says. It's a great program. Your presentation skills are certainly being put to good use. Continued success. I told you Mr. Salter checks in every once in a while.
Yeah, that's great. Good to see you.
Tries to come on in, especially with one of his kids. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good.
So, so I worked as a New England financial advisor, and then we kind of came across the financial crisis, which kind of was a step back for a lot of people because some of the largest financial institutions on the planet were buckling and potentially going under. So took that back and actually utilized my accounting degree and went and worked in public accounting for a few years, which is actually a great job. It's probably a better job for somebody that's more introverted because you spend a lot of time kind of working behind a desk. You're plugging numbers and working on spreadsheets, and if that's kind of your thing, it's a great job. I've never met a poor CPA. I mean, they're in high demand, and it's a really good career. It just for me, I did that for 18 months, and it kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I'm more extroverted than introverted, which I already knew, but because of everything going on with the financial crisis, I needed a job. And the other thing that you really get from understanding and working as an accountant is you get to see how the sausage is made, if you will. Like, if you understand the inputs on a balance sheet or an income statement or a cash flow analysis, it's easier to relay the outputs if you're a decent communicator. So it put me in a good position because I understand how the sausage was made. And I had a friend working at BNY Mellon as an internal wholesaler who said, there's this job, it opened up, it's covering New York City. I think you should apply. I think you'd be good at it. So that's what I did. I applied. I ended up working as an internal. An internal is a really cool job. You work with an external wholesaler. Your job is to call on financial advisors, like Morgan Stanley financial advisor, Merrill Lynch financial advisor, and try to sell them mutual funds and develop kind of partnerships with these folks. And there's one guy inside that's kind of the junior level starter position, and a senior guy that is actually out in the field and he's meeting with these folks kind of on a day-to-day basis. So it was a cool job. You learn a ton. You make a lot of phone calls. So that fear of, sales just generally, it comes down to being either comfortable with somebody saying no or uncomfortable with it. And as an internal wholesaler, you're making 40 or 50 phone calls a day, and 45 of them are telling you no or go away, or, we don't have time for this right now. So you get really comfortable with that kind of, it's not failure, because in order to get a yes, you have to go through all the no's. It's like, you learn how to kind of manage your emotions around somebody saying no, that they don't want to to buy what you have to sell. But you also get with somebody who's been doing this professionally for
You don't
10 years.
personalize it. You don't personalize it, right?
You
Yeah.
personalize it, but you get to work really intimately with somebody that's been doing it for a decade,
Yeah.
and you learn.
Mhm.
Like it's like drinking from a fire
Mhm.
hose. You get to learn 10 years of this guy's knowledge and experience in 18 months,
That-
which because he has a stake in you being successful because you're part of his business. You're helping him grow his business. So the more he teaches you, the more you learn, the better you are at helping him grow and build the business. So it's a great job for people coming out of college that want to get into sales or want to get into financial services on the sales side. You learn a ton and you get a lot of
So tell me,
exposure.
what were you actually selling for? I'm a little, so you were contacting people like Merrill Lynch and all of the big investment corporations. And what were you selling? A fund? What were you selling?
Selling funds.
Selling
So
funds.
I
Okay.
work for Bank of New York, has a bunch of mutual fund companies
Got you.
that we package those funds.
Mm-hmm.
So, 50 stocks and 12 bonds into one
Right.
portfolio. And then we sell that to a financial advisor who
Right.
turns around and sells it to, your mom or dad who's got $100,000 they want to invest.
Right. 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 Right.
So that's kind of the way the workflow works there. Um, so did that for a while, did that for like 18 months, maybe 2 years, was able to get promoted to an external, started calling on banks. And that was kind of my first introduction to banks in New York City. So did that for a while. And then, there's progressions within the career. So you call financial advisors, and that's kind of your first level of sophistication from a buyer standpoint. Those folks are really managing relationships of their clients, not necessarily the money of their clients. And then the next level are kind of calling on the institutions themselves. And within those institutions, there are professional buyers. They are the central manager research team, where they basically pick investments on behalf of the firm. And then all the financial advisors that work at the firm select from those investments.
Okay.
So as I was working at the banks, I had a couple of relationships that told me that, in order to really move the needle at like a Citibank, for example, I got to start interacting with those folks. So that's what I did and had some success and ended up being invited onto a financial institutions group, which that's almost exclusively what I did.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm doing now. I was at BNY Mellon up until about a year ago, and I was given an opportunity to build a bank business at another firm called American Centric. So I now run North American sales for all private banks in North America for them. And that's what we do is we interface with those centralized manager research folks, and we kind of develop relationships and propose improvements to their asset allocation for their clients. And then, so JP Morgan is a great example. They're a client of mine. They have 4,000 financial advisors all over the country. It would take me 10 years to call on all 4,000 financial advisors, whereas I can call on 20 pro buyers in New York that are moving money on behalf of all 4,000. So that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Got you. Got
It's
you.
really interesting stuff.
It's
I
very
mean, it
interesting
sounds super
stuff.
boring. I
No,
mean, I
but
would imagine
you're
half of the
funny. I
people
mean,
listening.
I glaze over. I have a financial advisor, I glaze over. And the whole thing is you have to trust these people. Trust is huge because most people are not, knowledgeable in terms of what to do with their money and,
Sure.
security and all that kind of stuff. So, it's such an important job. And, how do you go about finding people that really are trustworthy and they're competent, and what would be your recommendations?
I mean, if you're looking for a
Folks that
financial
want to start
advisor,
making investments.
sure. I mean, if you're trying to start making investments as somebody that like our age,
Mhm.
I would look for a CFP, somebody that has a certified financial planner,
Right.
because they've all at least done the necessary coursework to become qualified.
Mhm.
I would say for somebody younger, I don't think there's ever a time that's too early to start investing. You know,
Right.
I wish I invested earlier,
Right.
because every $50,000 that I save today, I'm not saying I'm saving $50,000. It's not crazy, but if I were, it's worth $500,000 in retirement because of time value of money.
Right.
So the earlier you start investing,
Hmm.
the more time has a chance to increase the value of that money, and it's exponential. And it's actually just a really cool thing to get involved with. You know, some people play poker, some people play all these different things. Investing in stocks and kind of looking at companies and understanding where, you know, the ebbs and flows and where it's really fun. And
Right.
that's one of the reasons I got into it was, you know, when I was trying and going through that stage of my life where I was trying to redefine myself,
Hmm.
I was struggling to find something that was as dynamic as athletics.
Right.
There's like a high that you get from playing sports.
Yeah.
I found that in the financial markets because there's so many variables, and there's a lot of things that, you know, it's certainly not a physical
Right.
dynamic. It's more of a mental,
Hmm.
but it's equally dynamic, and it's really aging, and you really, you know, have a reasonable life and you know, a lot of fun kind of learning that. And it's also super competitive. It's, you
Yes.
know, 95% of the guys that I work with or work against are former athletes, Division I athletes that, you know, they found something similar. They liked competing, and this provides a new platform as an adult. It's
Hmm.
like golf, right? Like nobody plays golf. I mean, people do, but I didn't play golf when I was younger,
Right.
you know. But as soon as I got older and couldn't find a pickup football game anymore, you're like, what am I going to do to be competitive? You
Right.
pick up golf because it's something that you can compete in for the next 40 years.
Right.
Financial services is a lot like that.
Hmm.
It's a profession that you can compete in for the next 40 years
Yeah.
because
I
you're
love
not,
I love the analogy. I do.
yeah,
Yeah, the whole thing that you are in a game. I mean, it is a competition. It is a game. You challenge yourself to get more, to do better. You know, it's all that kind of thing. It's
yeah.
interesting though that athletes find a substitution, you know, with that kind of environment. Yes, I can
I
see that.
I feel like you kind of have to, you
Yeah,
know. There's a reason that people are drawn to athletics, and it's because they're competitive.
right.
Um,
Maybe
you
that's
know,
why Scott and Mr. Coppola. I don't know. Was Mr. Coppola there when you were there? He's the one of the business teachers at St. Joe's, and he does the stock market game. You ever hear the stock market game? Did you do it when
no,
you were in high school? It's pretty cool.
no.
So you're playing the
Oh, that's
stocks,
cool. So
and
we
it's a
didn't
whole
have
big
business
game. You're
classes.
playing against other schools, and then it even gets to more national competition.
That's
So
great.
it's real cool. Yeah, and the kids,
Yeah,
the boys get really involved in it, and I can see why. I mean, I'm picking the right stock, folks. I did my research, and it's not just,
yeah,
okay, like gambling on a horse. I'm just going to go, woo, no, it's, you do your research and you do your homework. I guess you do the same thing when you're betting on horses, but in this kind of situation, you're researching the stocks. So,
yeah. So
yeah.
we didn't have business classes when I was there. I did.
Ah, yeah, we
Yeah,
do. We do now, which is
that's
really great. We
great.
have an accounting class, which is a wonderful class that the kids could take. It's a great
That's
career
great.
exploration class. We have the economics class, so those are all good things. Yeah.
Wherever the economics professor is, please don't tell him that I said 2 + 2 is 4
Okay.
or 5.
Or four, right. He'll say
Yeah,
five.
he'll say 5, but he'll have good reason why.
Right. Exactly. I'm
Uh,
sure he will. Yes.
yeah.
So I have a question here from Jerry
Sure.
Steinhauser. What kind of investments do you recommend for someone in high school / going into college?
Oh, that's a good question. It depends on what you're trying to do.
Hmm.
If you're trying to actually accumulate wealth,
Hmm.
then you should buy ETFs, which is basically a basket of stocks that mirror the S&P 500, which is an index. So it's Apple, it's Google, it's Amazon, it's all of those companies that are in the S&P 500. You can buy an ETF that tracks that. That's basically free. If you're trying to accumulate wealth. If you're trying to learn about stock investing, then you should buy individual companies.
Hmm.
But you should only buy individual companies after you've done an analysis. And don't do the analysis that I do. Don't do the analysis that some book tells you to do. do your own analysis, because you'll learn something from it. You'll learn, and I mean, that's one of the things that I think young people should do more of, is take risks, because you're young. You've got time to make it up. I mean, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't. What would you bet? $100? It's not going to kill you, you know. So that would be my advice. Would be to, if you're looking to learn about investing, buy individual companies and do your own analysis. If you're actually trying to store away money to grow over time, buy ETFs, because they're low cost and they're fully diversified.
Good recommendation.
Yeah.
And they say, I was looking up like the job outlook for people in your field, and it really is significantly like a 16% growth they expect, which is much more, that's higher than average growth. So I think the field itself, in terms of financial investments and all of that, that we're going to need more people in this than less, which is important.
For sure. So, I mean, I think the way you have to look at it is, you know, in generations that have come and gone prior, they had pensions where they didn't have to save for their own retirement.
Right.
Whereas that's all long gone.
Right.
You know, in order to retire, and Social Security, which is kind of like that secondary backdrop, is not very well funded. So I think people recognize that and are having to force themselves to save and pay and finance their own retirement, which, you know, when you're young and you haven't really accumulated all that much money, doesn't really sound like why would I get a financial about $100? You know, but if you've been saving for 10 years and all of a sudden that number is like $100,000, you're like, wait a second, like I got to make sure that what I'm doing with this money is the right thing to do. And that's when the financial advisor comes in. So yeah, I think you're hit the nail on the head. It's only growing. And there's more of a need now for people with professional experience and advice that can help people navigate it, because it is a challenging environment and it's a challenging thing to do. And, you know, I would highly recommend working with somebody if you're wealthy. I would highly recommend getting into the field, because like you said, it's growing, it's rewarding, both financially, but also in, you know, it's mentally rewarding. I mean, it's challenging, it's dynamic, it's a fun, cool thing to do. I mean, one of the things that I don't tell people all the time, but I entertain clients a lot. You know, I travel around the country and work with all of these, you know, financial institutions, but we go to baseball games, we go to restaurants, we go to, you know, it's a really fun job. You get to do a lot of really fun things that otherwise you wouldn't get to do.
And that's when your soft skills come in as well.
For sure.
You know, that's huge. And that's what I think, you know, in terms of the theater program and things like that, you become more confident, you become more comfortable, you know, you know, just being around the girls. I mean, it's a very, I know with the guys, you know, if there's girls in a classroom and there's just guys in the classroom, it's going to be a totally different classroom. I mean, you know that. And that's the first thing I found out about St. Joe's, with some of the things that, you know, would happen with all boys are not going to happen if the girl's sitting there. And, you know, you get more used to being in different environments with people with a lot of money, with people that really don't have a lot of money, but yet have a dream, and, you know, working with people with all different backgrounds. What about cultures? As far as I know, you have global markets. You know, you have businesses. Your American Century has offices in like 6 different global markets or whatever, right? Have you had any type of, you have some experience with international business as far as your education? Do you do a lot outside? Do you do a lot in, you know, in Europe, in Australia, in, you know, Hong Kong? Do you do work yourself personally in that?
No. Internally, yes. So we interface with colleagues that are all over. I mean, I spent 8 years at BNY Mellon that has 50,000 people employed that are all over the world. So you interface with those folks, but as far as actually conducting business, not so much. So most of our industry is segmented. So there are, you know, the folks calling on European banks are based out of London. The people calling out of on Chinese or Hong Kong banks are based out of Singapore. You know, there's hubs, financial hubs in different parts of the world where, you know, some of these bigger companies tend to
Right.
be located.
Right. Right.
I'm
So
sorry to hear my
I have
daughter.
there's another question and answer here. Well,
Sure.
Mr. Salta said, to reinforce what you said, I know an HR person who has often said that she looks more favorably on applicants who played a varsity or college sport because they probably learned to work hard and learned how to work on a team with others different than themselves for a common goal. If an ex-athlete can articulate that they learned that, it helps them on the job interview.
I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, I mean, I don't only hire athletes, but
Right.
I find athletes to be good applicants because of that.
Mhm.
And everything we do is on teams.
Right.
So if you've successfully been able to navigate that teamwork environment,
Mhm.
that's a major plus because, collaboration is everything in the modern workplace,
Right.
especially now. I mean, with everything going on with COVID-19 and, we're kind of having to collaborate through technology. And if you don't have those skills going into it, it's going to be that much more difficult. So,
How has that impacted your business? Has it been very difficult or?
I mean, obviously the financial markets have been challenged over the last, 4 months or so.
Mhm.
Personally, so I work remotely to begin with.
Mhm.
So as far as me going to the office, it's not really all that much of a concern.
Mhm.
But I mean, I fly, 100,000 miles every year,
Right.
traveling all over the country, which I'm not doing right now. So
Right.
those face-to-face interactions and meetings, if you will, are now online or through WebEx or through Zoom or through,
Mhm.
some other medium. So it's certainly affected what we do. But you adapt and you evolve. And luckily, we have the technology to be able to do our jobs reasonably effectively. Um, do I miss, I honestly never thought I would say this, but I miss Newark Airport,
Oh.
which, if you've never
Absolutely.
been to Newark Airport is kind of a stretch,
Yeah.
it's not really, someplace where you long for. But, it's just, it's affected the business, but we're still moving forward. I think everybody should be pretty confident that the financial markets are on reasonable, stable footing.
Mhm.
As far as from a technology standpoint, like people can do the trading and execution
Right.
from pretty much anywhere. I mean, the stock exchange down on Wall Street is a shadow of what it used to be, even during good times. No COVID-19. There's not a lot of people down there, whereas it used to be this bustling. Yeah,
Yes.
it's not like that anymore. It's mostly done through technology already.
Mhm.
So it's
Right.
disruptive, but not detrimental.
Do you find people panicking right now?
You always find people panicking um, in good times and bad times, because when it's good, then they say, well, it won't always be good. And
Mhm.
when it's bad, it won't always be bad.
Mhm.
So there's always panic.
Mhm.
I am a firm believer in something that I've studied pretty closely is behavioral finance.
Mhm.
So I think the value a financial advisor can add his clients is not necessarily from an asset allocation standpoint. Leave that to like the people that only do that. They can add value by teaching the proper behaviors.
Mhm.
So when the financial markets go down, it's not a good time to say, oh, I'm going to sell my assets, because all you do if you do that is lock in long-term losses.
Right.
What you should really be doing is what's uncomfortable, which is buying more.
Right. Right. Right.
So behavioral finance, I think, is, if I were a 18-year-old guy and I was trying to figure out what would be a trend going forward,
Mhm.
understanding and being able to articulate behavioral finance is going to be critical,
Mhm.
because it's a fundamental part of what everybody does.
Mhm.
And from a financial, my financial advisor is a behavioral financial advisor. That's,
Mhm.
his role in my life is to manage my emotions, because, people get emotional about their money. It's
Right.
understandably, they worked really hard and, this is their life savings. They don't want to lose it. So it's behavioral finance is definitely
Mhm.
um, a growing part of the financial services business.
Mhm.
So
What
But
advice would you give seniors who are starting off their college and thinking about a business major?
so, I mean, I think the one piece of advice I would give an 18-year-old guy, whether he was going to college or not,
Mhm,
is when you're young,
mhm,
you're full of ideas. So I have a phone. Everybody, I mean, I have an iPhone. I'm sure a lot of people have iPhones, but they're the notes section of my iPhone, and I have like 15 years of ideas in that iPhone that just, and the difference between the guy that is a multimillionaire who created the toothbrush and the guy that's like a greeter at Walmart is they probably had the same idea. One guy took action and executed on it. The other guy just put it in his phone. So when you're young, if you have an idea, go for it. Because when you're my age and you've got a kid and you've got a career and you've got a wife and you've got a mortgage, you're not going to just say, okay, well, I'm going to stop this successful journey that I'm on because I'll take a flyer on this app
mhm,
that I think could work.
mhm.
So when you're 20, do that. When you're 25, go for it.
Right.
If you've got a cool idea and you think it could work, just go and get it.
Mhm.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, I wish I spent from the time I was 22 to the time I was 30 trying to develop a new business every year.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, if I failed 8 times, I
Mhm.
would have walked into my office
Right.
and been like, hey, here's what I've been doing for the last 8 years. And I would have hired him on the spot because here's a guy that's going out and trying to build something. He's a total innovator. He's an entrepreneur. That's the best way to be, is go and try and just, try.
Fabulous advice. You're absolutely right, because when you don't have all of the other responsibilities of family and mortgage and that kind of thing, that's the time to really take your chances, because it
Yeah.
gets more difficult when life gets more complicated.
I mean, look at the list of billionaires in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're all like in their 30s.
Guys, right?
It's because they took those shots
Right.
when they were young.
Mm-hmm.
Besides like the Bezos, but even Jeff Bezos, Amazon.
Right.
That was a used booked retailer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Amazon was started as, and now it's one of the largest companies in the world. So take that shot, give it a go. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Some guy like me will hire you when you're 30 and you failed 7 times, but are super smart and super, well,
Motivate. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that would be the perfect candidate to hire,
Right.
which doesn't sound like it would be. You'd think it'd be somebody else, but just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my advice.
Great. It's great advice. Okay. Any more questions today? If you have any more questions? Well, Nick, I can't thank you enough. I think we're good, and I thank you so much for your time. We are having an open house tonight for students who may be interested in St. Joe's. There is a virtual open house tonight, so I'm to remind you of that at 7 o'clock this evening. So spread the word. Anyone who's listening to this recording, please spread the word. And of course, as we said, cabaret night, Mr. Salta. Front and center, an interactive virtual event featuring music of the 21st century, starring the SJR Chorus under the direction of Rick Adams and the SJR Band under the direction of Mr. Joe Martirano. So I thank you once again, Nick, and best of luck to you. We want to hear all good things, and with your family, I hope all's well. And
Thank you.
please stay in touch with us. And would you be willing, if kids have questions, would you be willing to for them to shoot you an email? I'm sure you have that information. Just if they have any additional questions, that would be great.
I was just going to say that. I mean, I think it's sometimes difficult to ask questions in this kind of forum, but please share my contact information. And if you want to reach out, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thank you. Thank you again. Have a wonderful week. Stay safe.
Thank you, Arlene. You too. Bye, everybody.
Okay. Good night, Nick. Our last night talk is going to be with Adrian Puzo, class of 96. He's a financial advisor from Northwestern Mutual. He's going to talk about personal financial information and advice. I strongly recommend our seniors who are going into college, of course, then in September, get some perspectives on taking care of your finances, you know, those credit cards and all of that kind of stuff. But program is open for everyone. Everyone will get a lot out of it, I am sure. But I want to specifically say, you know, our seniors who will be going out and handling some of their own money and having to budget and stuff like that, I think Adrian will be good to give you some recommendations in terms of handling your fiscal responsibilities. All right, we don't want to have those calls home to mom and dad. I need more money. They'll start blocking your phone calls. So have a great day, everyone, and everyone be safe. Thank you.